The void of space rippled as thousands of warships materialized near Earth's orbit. Their hulls gleamed like polished obsidian under the distant sun, weapons systems humming with deadly energy. The hegemony had arrived, and Earth was their next conquest. Admiral Corvin stood on the command bridge of the Dominance, his flagship and pride of the hegemony fleet. His scaled skin reflected the blue glow of tactical displays as his four eyes narrowed, studying the planet below. For 8 centuries, the hegemony had expanded across the stars, consuming civilizations and adding their resources to the empire. None had successfully resisted. "Initial scans complete, Admiral," reported Lieutenant Thex, her exoskeleton clicking as she moved between monitoring stations. "Primitive defensive systems. Limited space presence. No detection of advanced weaponry." Corvin's ridge of spines flattened in disappointment. "This hardly seems worth our time. Their technology is centuries behind ours." Commander Nyla, his second-in-command, stepped forward. Her silver eyes gleamed with anticipation. "The conquest will be swift, Admiral. Their military cannot withstand even our first wave." Yet something bothered Corvin. In his 3 centuries of military service, he had led invasions against 52 worlds. Each time, the pattern was the same: panic, desperate pleas for mercy, hasty and disorganized resistance. But Earth remained silent. No diplomatic channels opened, no emergency broadcasts, no signs of terror as their doom approached. "Strange," Corvin muttered. "Are they truly so primitive they don't detect us? Or is there something we're missing?" Nyla dismissed his concern with a wave of her hand. "Their detection systems are rudimentary. Perhaps they don't yet realize we've arrived." Perhaps. Corvin wasn't convinced. "Launch surveillance drones. I want detailed scans of their military installations and population centers." Within minutes, holographic images appeared, showing Earth's major cities: New York, London, Beijing, Moscow, Tokyo. Corvin leaned forward, his brow ridges furrowing deeply. "The cities," he began. "They're empty," Nyla finished, confusion evident in her voice. The bustling metropolises they had expected to find were deserted. No vehicles moved on the roads. No civilians hurried through streets. Buildings stood silent, like abandoned monuments. "Impossible," Lieutenant Thex whispered. "There are billions registered on this planet. They couldn't evacuate in the time since our arrival." Corvin felt a chill run through his body, an instinct honed through centuries of warfare. Something is wrong. This isn't normal. Perhaps they've gone underground. Nyla suggested. "Hiding in bunkers." "No." Corvin shook his head. "This was planned. They knew we were coming." "Impossible," Nyla scoffed. "Our approach was cloaked. We've been monitoring their communications for years. They have no technology capable of detecting our fleet until we dropped out of hyperspace." Corvin's jaw tightened. "Deploy the first invasion wave. Target their government centers. I want answers." Throughout the fleet, landing ships detached from their carrier vessels. Each transport carried hundreds of hegemony soldiers in powered combat armor, bristling with weapons that could level cities. The ships entered Earth's atmosphere, descending toward Washington, Moscow, and Beijing. Commander Vex led the Washington assault team, landing his transport in the National Mall. His soldiers disembarked, weapons ready, expecting resistance. They found none. "Command, this is Vex," he reported. "No opposition. No civilians. The city appears completely abandoned." Similar reports came from Moscow and Beijing. The invasion forces moved cautiously through empty streets, scanning buildings and underground structures. Nothing. Then it began. In Washington, a hegemony soldier suddenly screamed as his powered armor locked up, trapping him inside. Another found his weapon deactivating in his hands. Within minutes, every piece of advanced technology the invasion force carried began to fail. "Command," Vex shouted into his communicator. "Something is interfering with our systems. We need immediate." His transmission cut off abruptly. Aboard the Dominance, Corvin watched in growing horror as one by one the signals from his ground forces went dark. "What's happening?" he demanded. Lieutenant Thex worked frantically at her console. "Unknown, Admiral. Our forces are experiencing total systems failure. Their armor, weapons, communications, everything is shutting down." Then the Dominance itself shuddered violently. Warning signals blared across the bridge as systems began failing throughout the ship. "Admiral," Nyla shouted, "we're losing power. Weapons systems offline. Navigation failing." Corvin gripped his command chair as the lights flickered. "This is impossible. Their technology is primitive. They couldn't possibly." "Sir," Thex interrupted, her voice trembling. "Something is emerging from Earth's shadow." The main view screen showed the dark side of Earth. From behind the planet, shapes began to appear. Not the crude satellites and space stations they had detected earlier, but something else entirely. Sleek vessels with hulls that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Dozens at first, then hundreds. "What are those?" Nyla whispered. Before Corvin could respond, a transmission cut through the chaos on the bridge. The view screen changed to show a human face, a woman with dark skin and eyes that held no fear, only cold determination. "This is General Jasmine Reeves of Earth's Unified Defense Force," she stated calmly. "Your invasion has failed before it began. Your technology now belongs to us. Your soldiers are being contained." Corvin rose from his chair, rage and confusion battling within him. "What trickery is this? You had no defense fleet, no advanced technology." Reeves' expression remained unchanged. "You saw what we wanted you to see, Admiral. For centuries, we've watched your hegemony spreading across the stars. We studied you. We prepared for you. Everything you detected was a facade." "Impossible," Corvin snarled. "We've been observing your world for decades. And we've been aware of your observation posts for just as long," Reeves replied. "What you thought were primitive satellites were actually advanced sensor arrays, monitoring your every move. What you believed were rudimentary defenses were decoys. All around the Dominance, Earth's hidden fleet moved into position. No energy weapons fired, no conventional attacks launched. Yet hegemony ships began shutting down, one after another." "Admiral," Thex cried out, "they're using some kind of directed electromagnetic pulse technology. It's bypassing our shields completely." Corvin watched in disbelief as his mighty invasion fleet became powerless, drifting hulks. On the view screen, General Reeves continued, "You should know, Admiral, that yours is not the first empire to discover Earth. Throughout our history, we've encountered others. Those who came peacefully became allies. Those who came as conquerors." She paused. "Well, there's a reason you've never heard of them." From Earth's surface, new signals appeared. Hidden installations activated, revealing what looked like massive cannons aimed skyward. "Our final warning, Admiral," Reeves stated. "Surrender or be destroyed." Corvin stood frozen, processing how completely he had been outmaneuvered. The hegemony had conquered 1,000 worlds across 3 galaxies, yet here they were, defeated before the battle truly began. "How?" he finally asked. "How did a single world develop technology superior to the combined knowledge of the hegemony?" For the first time, Reeves showed a hint of emotion, a slight smile. "Necessity, Admiral. Your empire grew through conquest. You steal technology, you don't innovate. Humanity grew through survival. When we realized we weren't alone in the universe, we didn't seek to conquer. We prepared to defend." The Dominance shuddered again as more systems failed. Emergency lights cast red shadows across the bridge. "You have 1 hour to surrender your forces," Reeves concluded. "After that, we will be forced to neutralize any remaining threat. The choice, Admiral, is yours." The transmission ended, leaving Corvin staring at the view screen, now showing his once mighty fleet drifting helplessly among Earth's hidden defenders. Lieutenant Thex approached cautiously. "Admiral, your orders?" Corvin's shoulders slumped as the weight of his failure pressed down upon him. For the first time in the hegemony's long history of expansion, they had met a force they could not overcome. Not through superior numbers, not through advanced technology. "Send the surrender signal," he said quietly. "All forces." As the message transmitted throughout what remained of his fleet, Corvin looked once more at the blue planet that had brought the mighty hegemony to its knees. They had come expecting an easy conquest, a primitive world ripe for the taking. Instead, they had found humanity. And humanity, it seemed, had been waiting for them all along. The surrender of the hegemony fleet hung over the bridge of Earth's flagship, the Spectre, like an unexpected victory feast. Commander Lyra Vega stood at the observation window, watching as hegemony vessels were systematically disabled and boarded by Earth's special forces. Her reflection showed a woman in her 40s with auburn hair streaked with silver and eyes that had seen too many war simulations now confronting the real thing. "Never thought I'd actually see this day," said Colonel Darius Reed, approaching from behind. His dark skin contrasted with the stark white of his uniform, medals glinting under the bridge lights. 3 decades of preparation. All for this moment. Lyra nodded, her expression remaining neutral. "The Earth Defense Protocol worked exactly as designed. Our quantum disruptors nullified their systems before they could fire a single shot." On the tactical display, hundreds of green dots representing Earth vessels surrounded the larger red signatures of the hegemony fleet. What had appeared to the aliens as a helpless, primitive world had revealed itself as a technological powerhouse with defense capabilities beyond anything the invaders had imagined. "General Reeves is boarding the Dominance now," Darius reported, checking his neural interface. "The hegemony admiral has requested a face-to-face meeting." "Interesting," Lyra mused. "I expected more resistance from a species with such a reputation for conquest." The bridge doors slid open as Dr. Javier Ortiz entered, his lab coat contrasting with the military uniforms around him. As Earth's leading xenotechnologist, he had spent years reverse engineering fragments of alien technology recovered from previous, less publicized encounters. "Commander," he said, excitement barely contained in his voice. "Initial scans of their vessels confirm our theories. The hegemony's technology is actually a patchwork of systems stolen from other civilizations. Their innovation stagnated centuries ago." Lyra turned from the window. "And that's why our disruptors worked so effectively." "Because they never developed proper countermeasures." "Precisely," Javier nodded eagerly. "They've relied on intimidation and numerical superiority rather than true technological advancement. Our quantum field generators exploited vulnerabilities they never even considered possible." On the main view screen, a secure transmission activated, showing General Reeves on the bridge of the Dominance. Beside her stood Admiral Corvin, his scaled features registering what humans recognized as shock and defeat. "Commander Vega," General Reeves greeted formally. "Admiral Corvin wishes to understand the terms of his surrender. I thought you should explain, given your role in designing our defense strategy." Lyra stepped forward, facing the alien conqueror whose empire had subjugated countless worlds. "Admiral, your fleet is completely neutralized. Your technology has been compromised at the fundamental level. We are currently extracting all data from your ship's archives regarding hegemony territories, military capabilities, and the civilizations you've conquered." Corvin's spines flattened against his skull. "How?" he demanded, his translator conveying the desperation in his voice. "How did a single world develop technology capable of defeating the greatest empire the galaxy has ever known?" Lyra allowed herself a slight smile. "Because you gave us time, Admiral. Every observation post you placed near our system, every probe you sent, we detected them all. While you watched what we wanted you to see, we studied you." "Impossible," Corvin hissed. "Our stealth technology is based on phase shifting at quantum frequencies we mastered 50 years ago," Javier interrupted, stepping into view. "What you believed was covert surveillance was actually feeding us information about your capabilities. We thank you for the extensive data. The revelation seemed to physically impact Corvin, his massive frame staggering slightly. The cities, where are your people? Safe, Lyra replied simply. When we detected your fleet's approach, we evacuated all major population centers. Underground facilities, remote locations, places your initial strike would never reach. On a secondary screen, Darius pulled up footage from around the world. Massive underground complexes hummed with activity as civilians went about their lives, completely protected from the invasion force above. Other images showed hidden military installations emerging from beneath the ocean, from mountain ranges, from what had appeared to be ordinary farmland. For generations, Lyra continued, we've been building. While you saw primitive satellites and crude rockets, we were constructing our real fleet in the shadows of moons, in underground facilities, in the darkness between planets. Your observers never detected them because they weren't looking for technology beyond their understanding. Admiral Corvin's 4 eyes narrowed. You claim to have developed this technology independently. I find that difficult to believe. General Reeves exchanged a meaningful look with Lyra before responding. You're not the first to discover Earth, Admiral. Just the first in recent memory to approach with hostile intent. A heavy silence fell as the implications settled over the hegemony commander. His empire had cataloged thousands of spacefaring civilizations, yet none had mentioned encounters with humans. Now he understood why. The terms of your surrender are as follows. Lyra stated, bringing the conversation back to its purpose. Your remaining forces will be detained temporarily while we extract all strategic information from your systems. Your crew will be treated according to interstellar protocols for prisoners of war. Once debriefing is complete, you will be permitted to return to hegemony space with a single vessel. A single vessel? Corvin repeated incredulously. My fleet consists of over 3,000 ships. Consisted, Darius corrected coldly. Those ships now belong to Earth. Consider them reparations for your unprovoked aggression. Aboard the Spectre, Tactical Officer Jordan Hayashi approached Commander Vega with an urgent report. Commander, we're detecting unusual energy signatures from several disabled hegemony vessels. They appear to be attempting to activate some kind of self-destruct mechanism. Lyra's expression hardened. Override protocols. Now. Full-spectrum quantum disruption. Throughout Earth's fleet, specialized vessels moved into position, projecting invisible fields that severed the hegemony ship's ability to trigger their final failsafe. The energy signatures flickered and died. On the view screen, Admiral Corvin's expression shifted from desperate hope to final defeat. Did you really think we wouldn't anticipate that? Lyra asked, her voice deadly quiet. Every system, every contingency, every desperate last resort your military has ever conceived. We studied them all. In the background, Dr. Ortiz worked frantically at a console, tracing the attempted self-destruct signal to its source. Commander, this didn't originate from the Dominants. It came from a vessel at the edge of the fleet, the Harbinger. Lyra turned to Darius. Colonel, take a strike team and secure that ship immediately. I want whoever sent that signal in custody within the hour. As Darius departed, General Reeves addressed Corvin once more. It seems not everyone in your command accepts the reality of your situation, Admiral. I suggest you communicate the futility of resistance more clearly to your subordinates. Corvin's shoulders slumped. The Harbinger is commanded by War Prince Zarvox. He would consider death preferable to surrender. Then he'll face Earth justice for attempting to sacrifice thousands of his own people, Reeves stated firmly. Hours later, in the secure briefing room of the Spectre, Earth's military leadership gathered to assess the situation. Holographic displays showed the ongoing containment of hegemony forces and the systematic analysis of their technology. The data we're extracting is even more valuable than we anticipated, Dr. Ortiz reported excitedly. Star charts of regions we've never reached, technological blueprints from dozens of civilizations. This will advance our understanding by centuries. Lyra studied the information with a measured gaze. And the hegemony's home systems, their defensive capabilities. Jordan Hayashi stepped forward. Fully mapped, Commander. Their core worlds are heavily defended, but with the technological advantage we now possess, they're vulnerable. Their central government isn't prepared for an adversary with our capabilities. The question now, General Reeves stated, is what we do with this advantage. The hegemony has conquered hundreds of worlds, subjugated countless species. We have the means to end their empire permanently. A thoughtful silence fell over the room as the implications hung in the air. For centuries, humanity had prepared in secret, developing technologies and strategies for this exact scenario. Now, faced with victory, they confronted an even more complex question. What kind of interstellar power would Earth become? We're not conquerors, Lyra said finally. We defended ourselves, yes, but we won't become what we feared. The oppressed worlds would welcome liberation, Darius argued. The intelligence we gathered shows widespread resistance movements throughout hegemony space. Before the debate could continue, the room's central display activated, showing a transmission from the dominants. Admiral Corvin appeared, but something had changed in his demeanor. The defeated military commander had been replaced by something else, a being confronting a fundamental shift in his understanding of the universe. Commander Vega, he began, his translated voice subdued. I have reviewed the terms of surrender. I'd also studied the historical and cultural data your General Reeves provided about Earth. I'd request permission to address your leadership directly. Lyra nodded, curious. Proceed, Admiral. Corvin's scaled features arranged themselves into what might have been humility. For 8 centuries, the hegemony has believed itself the pinnacle of civilization. We conquered because we believed it our right, our evolutionary imperative. Today, we learned otherwise. He paused, seeming to gather his thoughts. In our archives, there exists a prophecy from the early days of our expansion. It speaks of an encounter with the Silent Watchers, a civilization that would end our conquest. For generations, we dismissed it as superstition. And now, General Reeves prompted. Now I understand, Corvin replied. Your Earth remained silent while watching. You prepared while we believed ourselves undetected. You allowed us to come, knowing you would prevail. His 4 eyes fixed directly on the camera. The prophecy wasn't a warning about our defeat. It was a prediction of our awakening. The Earth leaders exchanged glances, uncertain how to respond to this unexpected philosophical turn. I propose an alternative to your terms, Corvin continued. Instead of returning to hegemony space with news of defeat, allow me to return as an emissary of change. Your victory need not lead to our destruction or your conquest. It could mark the beginning of transformation. As night fell over what had begun as an invasion day, Lyra stood alone on the observation deck of the Spectre, watching Earth rotate peacefully below. The blue planet, seemingly vulnerable in the vastness of space, had revealed itself as perhaps the most formidable world in the galaxy. The door slid open as Dr. Ortiz joined her. The preliminary analysis is complete, he said quietly. The hegemony's technology is impressive in scale, but fundamentally flawed. They built their empire on quantity, not quality. And that's why they never stopped expanding, Lyra concluded. They needed to keep conquering to maintain their power. Exactly. Caviar leaned against the railing beside her. But there's something else, something in their oldest records. References to another empire that vanished millennia ago, an empire that apparently encountered Earth and disappeared from history. Lyra turned to face him, her expression grave. The Council will need to know this before making any decision about Corvin's proposal. As they gazed back at the planet below, both understood that today marked not just the defense of Earth, but the unveiling of humanity's true place in the cosmos. The Silent Watchers had finally revealed themselves, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Grand Council chamber of Earth's orbital command station Artemis hummed with tension as representatives from every continent gathered to determine the fate of the hegemony fleet. The massive circular room, with its panoramic views of Earth below and the stars beyond, had never hosted a more consequential meeting. First Director Elijah Tanaka stood at the central podium, his weathered face reflecting decades of leadership through humanity's secret preparations. Around him sat the 12 regional directors, military commanders, and scientific advisors who collectively guided Earth's defense strategy. "The situation is unprecedented," Tanaka began, his deep voice carrying throughout the chamber. "For generations, we've prepared for this moment, the day when humanity would reveal itself to the galaxy. Now we must decide what that revelation truly means." Holographic displays activated around the room, showing the neutralized hegemony fleet still surrounded by Earth's phantom armada. Other displays showed the faces of countless species throughout hegemony space: the conquered, the subjugated, the oppressed. "Admiral Corvin's proposal is before you," Tanaka continued. "Instead of sending him back as a defeated commander, he suggests returning as an emissary of transformation, a herald of change for the hegemony itself." Commander Lyra Vega stepped forward, her military uniform contrasting with the formal attire of the council members. "Our intelligence division has completed its analysis of the hegemony's central systems. Their society is brittle, maintained through military might rather than cultural cohesion. The shock of defeat could trigger either reform or collapse." Dr. Javier Ortiz joined her, directing attention to another display showing ancient star charts. "More concerning is what we've discovered in their oldest records. References to another advanced empire that encountered Earth approximately 3,000 years ago. An empire that subsequently vanished from galactic history." Murmurs rippled through the council chamber as the implications sank in. "Are you suggesting?" asked Regional Director Nadia Okafor, her voice sharp with concern, "that we've done this before? That Earth has previously revealed itself and eliminated a threat?" Dr. Ortiz shook his head. "The records are fragmentary. We can't determine exactly what happened, only that contact with Earth marked the beginning of that empire's decline and eventual disappearance." From her seat at the high table, Admiral Prisha Sharma, Supreme Commander of Earth's Defense Forces, leaned forward. "The question before us is not just what we do with Corvin and his fleet, but what role humanity will play in galactic affairs moving forward. Do we remain hidden, reveal ourselves as liberators, or perhaps something else entirely?" As the debate continued inside, Admiral Corvin waited in a secure observation lounge adjacent to the council chamber. The defeated hegemony commander stood motionless before the viewport, watching Earth's continents rotating slowly beneath clouds that seemed impossibly white against the blue ocean. The door slid open as Colonel Darius Reed entered, accompanied by 2 security officers. "The council is ready for you, Admiral." Corvin turned, his scaled features impossible for humans to read, yet somehow conveying profound weariness. "Tell me, Colonel, before we proceed, is it true what your historical records suggest, that your species has faced extinction multiple times on your own world?" Darius studied the alien commander carefully before responding. "We've survived ice ages, plagues, world wars, climate disasters, and our own technological missteps. Each time we've adapted, evolved, unified." "Why do you ask?" Corvin's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. "Because it explains everything. The hegemony conquered because conquest was easy. We never faced true existential threats after our early evolution. We never needed to innovate beyond a certain point." He gestured toward Earth. "Your species evolved under constant pressure. You learned to survive by adaptation rather than domination." "An interesting theory," Darius replied neutrally. "The council awaits." Inside the Grand Chamber, all conversation ceased as Admiral Corvin entered. The alien commander seemed diminished somehow, his once proud stance now measured, his movements careful in Earth's slightly higher gravity. "Admiral Corvin." First Director Tanaka addressed him formally. You stand before the Grand Council of Earth as the commander of an invasion force that sought to conquer our world. Yet you now propose to return to your people not as a prisoner, but as a messenger of change. Explain yourself. Corvin stepped forward, his translator converting his multi-toned speech into clear human language. For 8 centuries, the hegemony has expanded across the stars, believing ourselves superior to all we encountered. Today, that belief died. He paused, scanning the human faces watching him. Your world has shown us a truth we never considered. That true strength comes not from conquest, but from resilience. The Admiral activated a small device on his wrist, projecting a holographic image of the galaxy, with hegemony territory highlighted in red. My civilization controls nearly 1/4 of the known galaxy, encompassing over 11,000 inhabitable worlds and nearly 300 sentient species. Yet in all our conquests, we have found nothing like Earth, a world that waited, watched, and prepared. Commander Vega leaned toward Dr. Ortiz. He's either remarkably adaptable or remarkably deceptive, she whispered. The question, Corvin continued, is not whether you can defeat us. You've proven that already. The question is what comes after. The hegemony without leadership will fracture into warring factions. Billions will suffer. Alternatively, he zoomed the holographic display to show the hegemony's core worlds. With guidance, we could transform. Your victory could herald not just our defeat, but our evolution. Admiral Sharma stood, her voice cutting through the chamber. And we're to trust that you, a commander who arrived with the intent to subjugate our world, have experienced such a profound change of heart in mere days. Corvin's secondary eyelids flickered in what might have been acknowledgement. I do not ask for trust, Admiral. I ask for wisdom. Kill me, imprison me, send me back in disgrace. These options are all within your power. But consider the opportunity before you. The hegemony has never known defeat. The shock will either destroy us or transform us. You hold that choice in your hands. As the council deliberated in private, the scientific team led by Dr. Ortiz made a startling discovery. In a secure laboratory deep within the Artemis station, they had been analyzing a peculiar artifact recovered from the Dominants, a crystalline structure unlike anything in the hegemony's inventory. It's pre-hegemony, Dr. Ortiz explained to Commander Vega as they stood before the containment field. Carbon dating suggests it's approximately 12,000 years old, and it contains data. Lyra studied the seemingly simple crystal. What kind of data? That's the extraordinary part, Javier replied, excitement breaking through his professional demeanor. It's a warning. Specifically, a warning about Earth. The laboratory's main screen activated, showing translation attempts of symbols embedded within the crystal structure. It describes humanity as the Silent Guardians, a species that appears vulnerable but possesses technology beyond comprehension. It warns against hostile approaches to our solar system. Who left this warning? Lyra asked. We believe it was created by a civilization known as the Ardari, a spacefaring empire that predates the hegemony by millennia. According to the limited information we've extracted, they attempted to establish outposts in our solar system without permission. The crystal describes how their fleet was unmade. The implications hung heavy in the air between them. Are you saying that 12,000 years ago, when human civilization was just beginning, something on Earth defeated an advanced alien empire? Dr. Ortiz shook his head. Not something on Earth. Earth itself. At Lyra's confused expression, he continued. The crystal contains references to a planetary consciousness, a protective intelligence that guards this world. The Ardari believed Earth itself was sentient in some way, defending its chosen species. Before Lyra could process this revelation, her neural interface chimed with an urgent message. The Council has reached a decision. They want us both present immediately. When they arrived at the Grand Chamber, they found a transformed atmosphere. The earlier tension had given way to something like resolute purpose. Admiral Corvin stood before the Council, awaiting their judgment. First Director Tanaka rose from his seat, his expression solemn. Admiral Corvin of the Hegemony, we have reached our decision. You will return to your people, not as a prisoner, not as a defeated commander, but as a witness. Corvin's spines shifted in what might have been confusion. A witness? Yes, Tanaka confirmed. You will return with a single vessel, as originally proposed. But you will carry with you evidence of what you encountered here, not just our technology or our military capability, but our history. At a gesture from Tanaka, the chamber's displays changed to show Earth's past, its wars, its disasters, its triumphs, the rise and fall of civilizations, the development of technology, the unification that had eventually led to humanity's current state. For millennia, we fought ourselves, Tanaka explained. We nearly destroyed our world multiple times, but each crisis forced us to adapt, to innovate, to reconsider our fundamental assumptions. When we discovered we weren't alone in the universe, when we found evidence of observation posts monitoring our world, we didn't panic. We prepared. Admiral Sharma stepped forward. You will return with this knowledge, Admiral, and with something else. She nodded to an aide, who approached Corvin with a small, secure container. This contains quantum communication technology. It will allow direct, instantaneous contact between Earth and the Hegemony Central Worlds, regardless of distance. Corvin's 4 eyes widened. Such technology would transform interstellar relations. The advantages are precisely why we're sharing it. Sharma interrupted. This isn't a gift, Admiral. It's a connection. One that cannot be severed, cannot be hidden, cannot be used for surprise aggression. Your empire will have to adapt to true, permanent contact with equals. As the implications settled over him, Dr. Ortiz approached with another revelation. We found this aboard your vessel, Admiral. He projected an image of the ancient crystal. Do you recognize it? Corvin's reaction was immediate. His scales flattened against his body in what humans had learned was an expression of profound shock. The Watcher's warning. It's real. We thought it just a myth, a story told to young hatchlings. It's very real, Dr. Ortiz confirmed. And it predicted this moment thousands of years before your civilization achieved spaceflight. Corvin stared at the screen, finally understanding the full scale of Earth's capability. You could have destroyed us completely, he said quietly. Yes, Tanaka acknowledged. We chose another path. The question is, will the Hegemony choose likewise? 3 months later, aboard the Earth diplomatic vessel Concordia, Commander Lyra Vega stood at the observation deck, watching the approach to the Hegemony homeworld of Vax Prime. The massive planet, with its 3 moons and orbital infrastructure, grew larger in the view screen. Incoming transmission from the Planetary Defense Command, reported Communications Officer Hana Iwamoto. On screen, Lyra ordered. The face that appeared wasn't Admiral Corvin, but a female of his species, her scales a deeper blue, her eyes showing what Lyra had learned to recognize as cautious respect. Earth Vessel Concordia. This is High Commander Silara of the Reformed Hegemony Council. You are cleared for approach to Diplomatic Dock Alpha. Welcome to Vax Prime. As the transmission ended, Dr. Ortiz joined Lyra at the viewport. The Reformed Hegemony Council. It seems Corvin's return had the effect we hoped for. Or they're putting on a show, Lyra cautioned. Real change takes more than new titles. True, Javier agreed. But the quantum communications network shows promising signs. 17 formerly subjugated worlds have already established independent governments. The Hegemony's military has withdrawn from 32 systems. It's a beginning. As the Concordia docked with the massive Vax Prime station, Lyra reflected on the transformation of the past months. Earth had emerged from millennia of silence, revealing itself not just as another world, but as a fundamental force in galactic politics. The path ahead remained uncertain. Trust would take generations to build, old wounds wouldn't heal overnight, and the temptation of power would test humanity's resolve. But for the first time, the galaxy was witnessing something it had never seen before, conquest giving way to cooperation, domination yielding to dialogue. In the diplomatic reception hall, Admiral Corvin waited among the gathered hegemony officials. When Commander Vega entered with the Earth delegation, he stepped forward, performing the traditional human greeting of a handshake with remarkable accuracy. "Commander Vega," he said, his translator conveying genuine respect. "When I led my fleet to Earth, I believed I would be conquering a primitive world. Instead, I found teachers." Lyra accepted the gesture, aware of the historical significance of this moment. "And we found that the universe was ready for change. Admiral, the question is whether we're all prepared for what comes next." Corvin gestured toward the massive window overlooking the hegemony capital city, a sprawling metropolis now buzzing with representatives from dozens of formerly oppressed worlds. "A new age begins today. Not the age of the hegemony, not even the age of Earth." He turned to face the assembled delegates from across the galaxy. "Today begins the age of understanding." As night fell over Vax Prime, lights twinkled across the cityscape like earthbound stars. In orbit above, vessels from 100 worlds moved in carefully choreographed patterns, former enemies now cautious allies. And among them, Earth's ships maintained their silent watch, not as conquerors, but as guardians of a fragile new beginning. The invasion that had intended to subjugate one world had instead liberated hundreds. The empire that had known only expansion had learned contraction. And humanity, after millennia of preparation, had finally taken its place among the stars, not with fire and fury, but with wisdom born of countless struggles against extinction. Earth was no longer silent, and the galaxy would never be the same again.